Welcome back, Rebels.
Hello.
We've got some good news for you this week.
If you live in London, that is.
Definitely. Or unless you can travel to London as well.
Yeah, or just, get a plane ticket. Just whatever.
Or a train. Or
Wherever you live, just come to London because it's going to be great. So 25th and 26th of September 2019, we will be doing
some live podcasts in the Apple Store.
Yes.
So that's the Apple Store in Regent Street. You can go online and sign up. If you search for Today Apple on Google, or you go onto our Instagram and you'll see we'll put some links up there as well so you can sign up. And if you're watching on YouTube, we'll add a link in the description below.
Yes, we are going to be interviewing Reggie Yates.
Yep.
And we're going to be interviewing Harris Nukem, two incredible creatives. So really excited to be chatting with them live in the Apple Store. You guys can come down. We're going to be doing Q&A, so you can meet Reggie, you can meet Harris, you can meet us, bring any questions that are burning. And we'll also be putting the audio of the interviews up on the podcast. So for everyone who can't get down, don't worry, you'll still be able to listen to it. We're working on doing a video as well, so YouTube potentially, but we'll see.
Yeah. Also, all of these events are free. So if you want to come down, just go online, sign up, and we'll see you there. Ooh, that's good.
Today, Adam, I would like to talk to you about luck.
That's a great thing to talk about. Is there such thing as luck?
Is there such thing as luck? There is and there isn't. I think a lot of people get really bogged down with the concept of luck, that it's just this mythical thing that just appears to someone and goes, oh, you have good luck, you have bad luck. And it's really a lot more scientific than that. Yeah. I think that it's obviously an old cliche, you create your own luck, but I think that's absolutely true, because the more energy you put into the thing you're doing, the more opportunities will come from that.
Yeah, I like to think of luck as probability, which is kind of like taking the more mathematical approach to it. It's like the more times you put yourself out there, the higher chance there is of something happening to you. Say, for example, there's a 5% chance of meeting the right person that day. If you go out 100 times, there's 5 of those times you're going to meet someone. If you only go out once, there's a good chance that you won't meet someone that day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a numbers game. And for us, it's like, so someone we'd really like to get on the podcast is Gary Vee. And with each guest that we get that has either been on the Gary Vee show or
has some affiliation to him in some way. Yeah.
The closer that we get to that. And then when we do finally get our interview with Gary Vee, it will be like, oh, that was really lucky. I can't believe you managed to get that. But it won't be. It'll be calculated.
Yeah, everything leads on to something else, doesn't it?
It was lucky that we launched this podcast to number one, but it wasn't. It was calculated, and it was hard work, and it was everything leading up to that stage.
Yeah.
So I think what luck comes down to is being as good as you can be at your craft. Mm-hmm. So whatever stage of your journey you're at, you're going to get different opportunities. Yeah. The more skilled you become at your craft, the more opportunities will come. I think that's inevitable.
I think with the probability side of thing as well, it's like the better you get, the higher probability is every time. It's like when you first get started, there might be a 1 in 100 chance, but then by the time you've been doing it for years and you've got really proficient at what you're doing, that might be 20%. So every time you go in, it's a higher chance of doing it. So there's the two sides of it. It's like, 1, work really hard and get really good so you can increase your probability, and then 2, put yourself out there as much as you can to make sure that you're kind of getting the most rewards from it.
Yes, online I see a lot of successful people. Online I see a lot of people saying that's easy for you to say to successful people. But what they forget is that every single person starts from zero. You have to use the resources that you have around you. And so if you have some people are starting from higher ground than others, but really everyone starts from a space where no one is paying their product or brand or creativity.
Yeah, everything starts with an idea, doesn't it?
Yes. And it's then up to you to garner as much attention for that idea as possible. And as you do that, the more opportunities will present themselves. And I think people call it luck because in the beginning, those opportunities are very, very few and far between.
Yeah, I feel like this week's guest is a perfect example of this as well.
Yeah, make your own luck. And Lily Mercer certainly has done that. So Lily's a journalist, an editor, a DJ, radio presenter. But when you look at her career, you can see that every single opportunity has come because of the flags that she's been planting, because of so for example, one way that she's made her own luck is that she was working for one radio station, putting out interviews. Someone from Beats, Apple's radio station, saw that she'd done an interview, and it was from that interview that she got her gig with Apple. So every single piece of content that she's creating is a flag. You never know who's going to see that flag. You never know who's sitting in the audience that you're speaking at. You never know who's listening to your podcast, who's watching your YouTube videos. You never know who is following you on Twitter. And that's where the opportunities come. That's where the luck comes, is just by growing that. Lily has literally built her career from planting those flags and then maximizing each opportunity that's come in from those flags. And one thing that she does that I think is really interesting is she champions new artists. Yeah. So rather than going after the huge artists that are already successful, although she does do that as well, but she really, really flies the flag for these young up-and-coming artists.
Yeah, I think it's like playing the long game, isn't it? It's rather than going for those short wins, thinking if I make good relationships with these people now, in 10 years' time or 5 years' time or 2 years' time when they're really famous, I'll be one of the people that helped them get there, and you'll have a way better connection. Like if you sit and have an interview with someone who's got sold millions and millions of records, they're not going to be as invested in you as someone who's brand new and know that you can help them.
Yeah, and yeah, when you help them sell their first 500 records, they'll remember you forever.
Yeah. And
because of that, Lily has really good relationships with like some of the most famous rap artists on the planet. So really interesting interview. Very cool person, and I loved it.
Enjoy.
Hi Lily.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thanks for doing our podcast.
It's lovely to be here. Very, very amazing studio you've got. I've seen some pink, so I'm happy.
yeah, there's a few bits of pink that you really caught onto.
I trusted you straight away.
I've been painting a pink wall all day. Actually, I've still got pink paint on my hands, so it's been a pink day.
Just jumping up in your kind of standards now.
Yeah, that's it. That's what you need. Just basically, people might just start covering themselves in pink paint just to say hi to me, just in case, you know. It might work though. Because I like you just because you walked in with it was like milkshake coloured pink paint. It wasn't just any pink paint. It was
pure strawberry milkshake.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm open to anyone that's wearing pink paint in future.
Pink and grey is my favourite colour combination.
Yeah,
any shade of pink with any shade of grey just works really well.
Yeah.
I'm that, but with pink and green. Yeah.
Pink and green.
They're the best. No, always.
That's controversial.
What kind of green? Like any green? Or?
I really like neon pink with like a mint green.
Okay.
Or a pastel green. Yeah. But to be honest, any. So yeah, a pastel, do you know, is it Palm Vaults? They've got a pink and green logo, and that is those are the perfect shades.
They were really well, yeah.
But I think someone was telling me about the colour spectrum and that the opposite colours always complement each other. Yeah. And I think... I may be wrong, but I think pink and green are opposites. Ah. That's how they tried to explain, you know, why I was so into it. Yeah.
I've never thought about pink and green before. Pink and brown I can work with in like a 70s. Yeah, come on, 70s kind of vibe, yeah.
Like a Neapolitan ice cream, you know?
Yeah.
That's, with that like kind of like vanilla coloured yellow as well.
Yeah, yeah, that works really well, that kind of 70s palette. Like think of Del Boy's house. Yeah. That's all very pink and brown.
I do love like a really deep green. It's kind of almost emerald with like a pastel, like a baby pink. Exactly. Those two together are beautiful.
You are listening to Colours of the World. Right, we should probably do a proper podcast now. Lily, tell me, when did you first get into hip-hop music?
Well, I don't remember the exact moment I heard a song and was into it, but the first album I bought, I was 8, and it was Bone Thugs and Harmony. And that was because of the Crossroads video. I had an older brother who was 8 years older than me, and he was like super into hip-hop, but then he was like at the age that old school garage came. Well, actually current day garage for him.
Yeah.
But like UK garage was like what he'd got into at about 16. So I was 8 and he pretty much just gave me all of his records, like all these CDs that he bought were no longer relevant to him. So I ended up, so I was watching a lot of MTV with him and ended up kind of inheriting his CDs. And it was around the time like Biggie died. So it was actually, to be honest, quite a commercially relevant time like for rap. I think it was the first time rap was like in the charts in the UK as well. I was watching it on TV on Top of the Pops, so the main kind of performers would be, well, at least half of them would be rap. So yeah, I'd say I was about 8 years old when I fully did. And it just, I remember going to I used to go to Play Centre because I had a single mum. Yeah. So I'd go to Play Centre and we had this end of summer disco. And I walked up with my More Money, More Problems CD from Our Price with my name in a post-it just in case anyone tried to steal it. And took it over to all the rude boys that were DJing. It's around Highbury and in North London. And basically they kind of looked at me and were like, okay, yeah, we'll play it. But what's this girl doing with this CD? But so it was really, though from those days, that was it really. It was the only kind of genre I was into.
And your mum was supportive of that journey?
She really was, like, considering, you know, she was a feminist and everything. It's like listening to the most explicitly, you know, like offensive lyrics towards women. But at sometimes, like, I remember, like, one of my favorite moments was, I think it's my 13th birthday and my brother was DJing, and it was when Black Rob Woe was out. Mm-hmm. Great song. So at the end, this is how cool my mum was with what I was listening to, but at the same time, educating me on it. Like, obviously, women aren't bitches. She wasn't, you know, condoning it, but she goes, yeah, I really like that song Ho. And I was like, it's called Woe, but like, yeah, like that is basically what you'd assume of the rap world, I guess. But yeah, she just completely was like, yeah, it's really cool. And my mum was really into Motown. Like she was actually a punk when she was growing up, but she was really varied and loved music as well. So I grew up with like all these Motown like 45 records in the house. She told me My Girl by The Temptations was about me, and I fully believed her.
Amazing.
So it was like this kind of, you know, together we were really, so what she kind of pointed out to me was like, as I'm listening to rap, she was like, you know, this is by this person originally, and you know that is originally, you know, Sam Cooke's song. So
the samples and stuff.
So that's almost connected us, that I was like, oh, this is cool. And she's like, yeah, but it was also cool when I listened to it the first time round. And like, she actually showed me it was more than, and like, I was like, you know, asking questions about the Black Panthers. So she went and bought me a book on the Black Panthers. She bought me like the Malcolm X autobiography. Like she understood that hip hop was more than just, you know, what it was seen as, you know, in a negative way. She understood the education.
It's a full culture.
Yeah.
Do you think it's better now?
What, the misogyny?
The misogyny and the...
No, if I'm honest.
Right.
I think
I feel
it's
like
just the
we've got more kind of gay rappers out now, which I don't think you would have got in the 2000s. No. And so maybe there's a little bit more acceptance, but you still think there's a lot of work to be done.
I mean, I'd say case in point with Fredo in the UK recently, where like his friend whispered in his ear, and he's literally being like written off by a lot of people just because of his friend whispering in his ear and them assuming he's gay. So I feel like that, especially not in street rap, I'd say that there's a certain kind of rap that you will never like, because even like I remember someone was saying about Frank Ocean being really important for when Frank Ocean came out as bisexual. That's so important for rap, and I was like, I do hear you, but I don't think it's as important as Young Thug being a straight man with painted nails, dresses on. You know, for a straight man to do that and be so like in Atlanta, Young Thug is like one of the biggest gangsters. Like you can't tell him he's not, you know, allowed to shoot people and wear a dress. You know, and I'm not saying that that's a better thing. That obviously Frank Ocean is a greater person in the world, you know, because he's not as much of a gangster. But he's like, you know, the fact that he is bisexual but he's singing is less important than a straight man rapping and being so core in the rap community. Well, and like I would say Young Thug, I don't think of him as homophobic, but I don't know if he's exactly like welcoming towards homosexual culture, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
He sees it more as it's a style of dress and things for him, but he is pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable for a man to wear, which I think is cool.
You found it hard being female in a hip hop setting? Yeah,
like I'd say I feel it more when people don't know who I am, which sounds really bad, but sometimes people treat me differently than another girl backstage just because I'm a journalist and stuff. Like people might assume that I'm a groupie and look at me one way and then find out who I am and come back and they're like, oh hi, nice to meet you, and actually bother to talk to you. And I've been in many situations, like I've been on like the Flatbush Zombies tour bus and everyone being like, why are you here? Like how are you allowed to be here? And then like finding out I went to their first ever show in New York, and I've known them since before they ever dropped an album. Like they start to understand, you know, girls can be friends with rappers, which is kind of crazy to people, but you know, and same with women that can be journalists. I do feel though that in a way I think that like, you know, to be a white woman in this world is slightly weirder, but I do think in some ways that throws people off because they're just like, I'm just such an anomaly that they're just like, I don't know. But like, because I think if it would all be different if you didn't know how much I knew or cared about the music.
Yes.
So because I am, obviously, it's like sometimes I'd read comments on my interviews and they're like, oh, this girl's so annoying. Like, you know, why is this white girl talking about things? And then other people be like, no, she really knows her shit. Like, if you actually bother to watch my interviews in full, if you listen to an interview maybe instead of watching it, you might take in more and be like, no, she's actually, regardless of looks or gender, she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah. How do you deal with that?
What, being judged? Or?
Yeah.
I feel, to be honest, we're all as judgmental as each other. So I've been guilty of that. You know, there are many white people in the industry as well that I'm like, oh God, like, you know, another white guy doing this. And it's like, actually, no, they might know more than me, you know. I tend to just think that your work proves yourself. So there's no point being offended when you get judged, you know. It is very easy to take offense when you see the comments and they're cruel because trolls are horrible. But like, there's not really any point in it kind of affecting your work because you should probably work harder if you are offended, I think. No. offense.
What is Viper magazine?
So magazine, print magazine, I started in 2013 in October. I was basically frustrated that all the magazines I was picking up were like, I grew up on the XXL and the Source, and even like Hip Hop Connections in the UK, like there were a lot of print magazines that just started dying out. And if they did continue, they were like little pamphlets of their original selves. And I do feel, because the Source and XXL like are pretty shit now, but I was buying the Source in probably like around 2000, and I've even got like, I kind of sadly threw away my collection when I decided I was going to fashion school. I was like, I don't need these. Threw away like years of like original issues I bought myself, like tragic. But it was like around that time that I was kind of, you know, like reading about rap, and it was like there would be issues that had articles about the crack epidemic or something that you need to know really to know about rap in, you know, in its essence, and like the kind of culture of it and the history. And I just feel like by getting rid of them and only having, like, there was a point when I think it was just before I started Viper. So my uni magazine in 2010, my hand in for uni, had an interview with Danny Brown in it. And I was reading in 2011 or 12, XXL telling me about Danny Brown being this hot new guy to check out. And I was like, how did this girl, that's for like a girl in England for her uni project, interviewed an artist that 2 years later you want to tell me about is a hot new guy to check out? That you're fucking up if I know about someone that soon and you don't for years. So I just started to feel that they'd lost their core. And I also felt it was like, I called it like a conveyor belt of like kind of, I think I called them industry dinosaurs, which was a little bit rude because I do like a lot of them, but it would be like, oh, Rick Ross is on January's cover, and then Lil Wayne, and then Pusha T, and then I mean like, it would literally be a cycle of the same people for about 10 years, and I'm talking about from 2010 to probably 2000 and or even early actually, like 2007 to 2014 you got the same people on the same covers every year. So
this is obviously a very different kind of magazine, but there's a women's magazine, I can't remember which one it is. It's something like Closer, or one of those ones that you see at the checkout when you're and every single month is either Victoria Beckham or there's another one, or Rihanna. But like there's 3 or 4, and I read an article on about why it's only ever this select few women is because they sell more copies. Yeah. Exactly. And no one buys it if there's not Victoria Beckham on the cover. Yeah. So they're kind of under pressure to
sell. And that's exactly what like magazines should sell, really. That's the goal. But that's where I think it got to a point. I was basically really about boutique journalism and boutique publishing. And that's when I was like, you know what, this is the one time that you can make a magazine that no one's going to read. But instead of, so Time magazine ended up folding, and like interview's still around. But there were these magazines that were like kind of iconic titles that were just really big that ended up folding. And it was just a sign that the generic publication doesn't exist anymore, but the niche one does. Yeah. And that's why with Viper I was like, it's the only time I think a niche hip hop publication can exist. And it was a chance for me to put people on the cover that I thought deserved it. Like we put Earl Sweatshirt and Vince Staples on a cover, which I doubt anyone will ever do again, you know. So it was more that I wanted certain people to have the shine that weren't getting it. Yeah. But it's a sad fact that, you know, if you do like publishing in that era or in today's era, you have to do it to sell. And it's just, I feel like it's crumbled to the point now I don't think that publications can really exist anymore.
Well, I think today's society, we're so used to, like, you can pick your content, whereas like back in the day you'd have like your 4 channels, 5 channels on TV, and that was it. And then you'd have like, you get your music from Top of the Pops or whatever, like Smash Hits magazine you bought, or like something like back like ages ago. But now you've got Instagram and like social media and the internet, so you've got like, no matter what you're into, you can go fully into that and get constant content for that. Whereas like if you're into like UK garage around this certain time, it's gonna be so hard to find good information about, unless you know someone who knows someone, or there's a really niche like zine that someone's putting out. It's like we're in an age now where you can go super niche on something, and there's the audience for it as well, because you've got the platform to put it out there.
So you're no longer printing Viper?
We are, like, I think basically the next issue that we're printing will be our last, because it's our 10th and it's a very nice, clean, you know, round number. Like, I've really loved making print, but there's like, so we started to kind of do video more recently, and there's something about our target market being quite young and print being so expensive that it just doesn't really make sense to make a magazine for like 16 to 25 year olds that is printed on like luxury, you know, paper. I mean, I was never going to make a magazine that wasn't going to be beautiful. Like when my mum first saw the magazine, I remember she was like, oh wow, it's like a real magazine. And I was like, yeah, like what did you think I was going to, like pretty much like a smash hits, I think she was expecting. It was like something that was, something I was quite proud of was that she was surprised I could make something that was, you know, more than like a nice magazine. It's like glossy and it smells good. So I think that that's something that I've massively enjoyed. But it's like there's, you know, like there's what they say about insanity. It's like when you do the same thing, like expecting the same. Like if you keep on making something and like it's not like hugely growing each time, whereas in like selling print issues, there's no point in you kind of like repeatedly doing it when actually you could be influencing so many more people in a different avenue without them having to spend money. And that's something that we found with doing video. Like we did it's called Viper the Movie, but we did like this kind of short film with lots of different kind of cuts of interviews we've done, behind the scenes performances, and like that can go so much further, and it can be seen by people who can't afford a magazine in like millions, well not millions countries, there aren't millions, but you know, like countries across the world can see that, rather than paying £20 shipping before you've even bought the magazine. So I just feel like and I'm not saying that about all publications, that's specifically with Viper, but I do just feel like there's a really nice era of us being print, and now there's a whole new era that we can kind of play around with more, and that makes it more exciting for me.
I suppose as well, like if the reason you've started it is to educate the world on all these great artists that people aren't really seeing, then it's like, if that's why you're doing it, then it's better to be able to do it to 1 million people rather than just 200 people locally who can afford to go to that shop and buy a copy. Like, yeah, it's like, it's more of the reason why you're starting it.
That's the thing. I think it's like, you know, there's so many places, like you said, to buy into an artist, and it's actually way more like, I don't know, to actually have it, the interaction between just you and the artist, it's so much more important than having a magazine as the middleman. So it's like, unless you can do something in a really, like, you can bring something out of them that they haven't, you know, like there are so many great things I've seen magazines do. Like even, I mean, I can't even think of something right now, but like there's examples where people will do this iconic moment. Like even, to be honest, when, I can't remember who did it, was it Fader who had like Danny Brown and A$AP Rocky interviewing each other and stuff, and just having these artists interviewing each other, it's a really key way to get something out of them that you wouldn't get yourself. So, and it builds the trust that they have between their friends. It's like, you know, but I think the problem nowadays is that the whole, like, the concept of content, and everyone making content and like not really understanding what goes, what like people are really into, and like kind of like you essentially get sometimes, I think, people making a bit of a fallout with the artists, or even you get the cases in like when Chief Keef violated his parole and ended up back in jail because Pitchfork took him to a gun range. It's like there's a huge, like, massive, like, part of like the, I guess, the publication not understanding the consequences of an artist, or even where they really come from. Like, oh, let's go and film you in the hood, and it's like, no, you could actually get us in trouble as well as yourselves. So I don't know, I just think like content has almost become dangerous because people are so excited about like just putting things out without thinking about whether it's good or not.
So what's your content strategy? Do you sit down and plan things, or is it literally just about the artists more than it is about like taking them shopping or doing something wacky for views?
Yeah, pretty much like kind of dealing with the artists, like, and at least how they want to be portrayed. Like our interview with G Herbo we did in Chicago, he was like, I've always wanted to get my hair cut in an interview, and like brings his barber in. It was like, that was really cool because it was like not just a sit down interview, and it's like even the barber's like kind of, I think one point like he's like getting in on the conversation and stuff. So but the thing is, we were like, oh well, we can't, I want to go and do like, I want to go karting with someone and go like get my nails done with someone, but it's like you have to kind of ask them what they want to do rather than like kind of subjecting the artist to a date that they kind of don't want to do, like, which is essentially kidnap, you know. So that's where you got, I do think it's best to almost like you touch base with the artist either on the date or even beforehand if you can, and figure out something that both of you want to do. Because like we did a shoot for Viper, it was probably about 3 years ago, with Neff the Pharaoh, who's signed to like E40's label. He's part of the Bay Area, and we just like brought him to my house, and we're like, okay, well, we're gonna go and like take pictures in like the local estate. And he's like, okay, what's that? We're like, oh, the projects. He's like, hey, I'm out here in the projects, like, and he was just like with it. He just wanted to just kind of hang out and go where we wanted to. But then you take a certain kind of artist somewhere, and they want to be, you know, in a certain zone, protected. They don't want to be seen to be too accessible. I don't know. It completely depends. So I just think you network with them, and preferably their management as well, who will give you insight beforehand.
You've interviewed some of the biggest names in the world, so like Nas, Chuck D from Public Enemy, like all of these icons of from hip hop music. How do you approach an interview with someone like Nas? Because you only got 6 minutes with him first time, didn't you?
First time. Nas, I was terrified. Like, it was funny because after I interviewed Nas, that night I like woke up at 5 a.m. and just started crying, and I was like, what's wrong with me? And I was like, I think it was the biggest thing I'd done at that point. It was almost like this climax that after it was over, I was like, God, what do I do next? But that was like, I didn't even know kind of what to do in that 6 minutes to justify it. But I did actually interview him for like a half an hour piece for Clash magazine for the cover. And like, I mean, with Nas, he's quite a, like, he's very quiet and, well, not, he's not very quiet, but like he's quite a kind of reflective and subdued kind
thoughtful,
of person. Yeah, thoughtful. So you don't just go in like excited. So it was harder to kind of draw questions out of him. And with Nas, he was one of, so like, I mean, you guys are currently into, you know what it's like. When you ask someone a question, they hit you with a question, it just throws you and you're like, like, fuck, what do I do? And Nas, like, because my ex-boyfriend was from Queens. So I was like, oh, I heard that you're the only rapper from Queensbridge that can still walk through there. Like, you know, you can still go back to your projects. And like, apparently this is true. Like, apparently it's just Nas. And like, he just goes, who told you that? And didn't answer the question. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I actually thought I'd broken Mary J. Blige when I interviewed her, because I asked her a question and she started laughing, but she was so perfectly like poised and prim. So like, yeah, I mean, sometimes you don't get what you expect and it can really throw you off and you just got to remain calm. But generally, like, yeah, I think I try and go off their energy, if you see what I mean. So with Nas, I just kind of try to be as calm and not excited. And like, the interview was cool. It was just us two, and like, it's actually a studio in Kingsland Road. We were in like this kitchen, just like a kitchenette, not even a full kitchen.
Should have taken him to a petting zoo.
I should have, literally. I mean,
Hackney Farm.
Next time. Next time I'm with Nas, yeah. I mean, Hackney City Farm was the closest one as well. Yeah. So, I mean, that's goals. But I like, this is the problem, because people don't sometimes understand the press run thing, where you just go into a room and you have to just join in with them. Yeah. But like, I do want to get to the point where I'm big enough to be like, hey Nas, meet me at the petting zoo. Or like, become to the point where it's like they're so essential to their UK press run that they have to come to where I say.
Yeah. But that's what you're building, so that's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. I find interviewing so hard, and we're both still learning, because you're thinking a million miles a minute, because you've got in your head the list of questions, but then you want to give the best to your audience. Whoever's listening, you want to give them the best product. And you might say something and then it'll be like, you have to store it there. But then sometimes you'll go a little bit too far on that we can't go back to that. So you just have to disregard that and then move on to the new thing. And I find it so difficult, but it's all a learning process, isn't it?
It is. And I tend to find it's more natural to go with so like, say I said something 5 minutes ago and then I say this, and you can kind of, usually you come back to what I said 5 minutes ago at some point, because I've tried to do interviews and like keep it in a rigid order, and I feel like it doesn't feel as conversational for the person involved, which is the most important thing, is that they don't think it's an interview. That's what I figured out. It's like, you literally have to make sure that they don't think they're being interviewed, like, and because like, not in like a manipulative way, but just to make them feel like I mean, for a start, like, you hope, like, it's funny, Zane Lowe actually said to me, I said that, you know, when you're doing a press run and like they've just got off a plane, they're jet lagged, and like, you just say, like, while the cameras are being set up, you just say, oh, you know, don't worry, this will be quick. And he said, never say that again. Promise me you'll never say that again. And he was basically saying, like, your time is as important as theirs. Don't apologize or try and, and it was a really good thing to hear, because at that point I was kind of just like, so Zane Lowe has interviewed a million people, and he's probably one of the best interviewers on the planet. And for him to remind me that it's like, it's a shared stage. It's not like, you're not like the pauper, like, talking up.
It's going on that same level that they are. Yeah.
And not to say that I definitely haven't had a career like Nas. I'm not saying that I'm equal to him, but just to be able to, because you can't have a conversation with someone that like you feel is below you, or, you know, it just doesn't. You have to click with someone and feel that you're on a level to talk, or you won't say something as interesting because you think they won't get it. So I feel that it's that balance of finding the conversational side and the banter, but also being like, hey, like, when I interviewed Raekwon, like, the first question I asked was about Enter the 36 Chambers, the film, and how they'd all gone to see, like, the Wu-Tang had gone to see this film in the movies, like, theaters as kids, and then when it came to naming their album. And I said something about it, and he was like, you really know your shit. Like, and it was straight away, because it's my first question. He's like, it's like he rolled up his sleeves, was like, all right, I'm with a fan.
Yes.
I can get down here. Like, and saying, like, Bone Thugs and Harmony told me, they were like, she really knows her shit. Like, said it to each other in the interview.
Yeah, because you got to think, like, you do know your shit.
Yeah.
And there's going to be so many people that interview them who are just like media people, no idea who they are. They're just told to be in the room with this person at this time. They'll look at their Wikipedia, find out the basis about them, or just they'll be there with set questions. It's like, so tell me about your new single. Why have you written this? And just have a generic stuff that they're doing it because they have to. Whereas if you can kind of make them feel like, oh, actually, I want to be here, and this is a cool person I actually want to have a chat with, and that's so much better.
It's so true. And that's what I meant about brightening up their day and being like that little ray of light in the middle of the 20,000 interviews they did, that they could be like, hey, I like that one because they talked about Dixie. Like, I remember talking to Matt Miller about Dixie, and like, it was just like, it's interesting. Oh yeah, I've got, Alchemist said that he brushes his teeth with Nando's sauce. Like these, like, just where if it isn't, like, obviously you don't want to, like, it is about work and they do want to promote something, but actually you're just like, you know, promo, and then throw in some amazing, like, random stories. And yeah, like I had Just Blaze choke me, or like kind of like, sorry, that sounded really wrong. It was a self-defense technique he was trying to teach me. Okay. But he was like, it's 5 Fingers of Death, which I think is from, it's not Coming to America, it's from the other Eddie Murphy film that's iconic, that Trading Places. So there's the 5 Fingers of Death technique, and like basically
it's also from kung fu movies as well.
There's a real thing.
Yeah, so like they charge up like all 5 fingers, and then if it's placed on it'll make your heart explode or something in a kung fu film. Yeah.
So I feel like that's where they got the scene from in Trading Places, because it's kind of like they're in a cell and this guy's talking about it. But so yeah, Just Blaze was like, I'll show you do this, and then basically suddenly I'm in a headlock. And it was like the most surreal, and that was really early on in like my like career basically of interviewing. So that's where it's like, yeah, you could interview if you're a boring interviewer, you're not going to have any of those stories, I'm sure, because you've got to kind of go in with this angle of like, there was a really good thing I learned at fashion school, weirdly, was my teacher said with interviews you should ask the bad question last. So, like, the question that you know is going to offend if you are going to ask one. Okay. Which, I mean, my rule, I try not to offend, and I try not to, like, I've asked certain rappers about their friends who have passed away because they were also musicians and completely regretted it, and I don't ever want to do any... I don't want to ask any negative questions, because what I've realised, I think I did it with Pharoah Monch as well, and, like, I didn't realise till that time that I was like, you leave that person in a state of mind of sadness, essentially. It's like a really horrible thing to do. It's like a complete mindfuck, and I would hate to have that done to me. So yeah, I don't do that, but like I do feel that like if you are going to ask a question that, like, I can't think of an example now, but it's even like, for example, you could ask Young Thug about Lil Wayne or something, or like something that you know they're going to be like, oh, I hate that guy, or you know it could fuck up the whole interview if you ask it too early. But my teacher in uni, she asked a very famous, I don't even want to say who it is because I believe he's passed away since, but a very famous TV presenter who wore a toupee, and she did this whole interview with him, and the last question she's like, so tell me about your toupee, and he hung up on her, and she was like, but the thing is, I got the interview, so even though obviously he's mad, he's going to go and tell my boss off, or tell me and my boss off, I've got the interview, so I walk out of there with what I came to do. But if I'd gone in and asked him about his toupee, then I've lost like the whole interview. So I think it's like there's certain techniques where if you're going to do something a bit silly, maybe do it at the end so they know you're serious.
Also, I think like it's your career as well. So it's like if you're just a journalist and you're there to try and literally steal a story out of someone to make yourself look good, then that's a pretty negative way to go about it. But thinking like, if I'm interviewing this person now, I could interview this person 10 more times in my life. So I'd rather them go away liking me off that first time and thinking like, and then when you email and be like, oh, I fancy an interview for this. And I'm like, oh, that's that dick who asked me about that. They're going to be like, oh yeah, she was really cool.
Yeah, it's so true.
We interviewed Torre in New York, and I've just recently watched the Surviving R. Kelly documentary. It's so interesting, like seeing him, because they only showed the clip of him asking R. Kelly, so do you like underage girls? Which the dude, like, simple question, you either go yes or no, and like preferably no, like you're on trial for underage girls, you go, no, I don't like underage girls. And he goes, define underage. And like, I know that Torre, like, because I had a chat with Torre off mic about it, and like inside his head, he's going, oh my fucking God. But he has to just keep this calm demeanor. But he was saying like the whole time he was leading to those questions, but he had to spend an hour asking questions that he didn't give a fuck about in order to get to that place where R. Kelly felt comfortable enough that he wouldn't just shut the interview down straight away and leave. So he had to like lay these foundations of questions, very like nice, easy ones, knock these ones away, and then he could go in for the kill. But I'm so glad that I'm not in the position where that's my job, that I have to try and embarrass you or get you to say something bad. Yeah. It's like, I just want you to say nice things. And I want to know like what's worked in your career and like how you've built it. Yeah. Whereas so
it's like the master manipulation to do it like that. And also, I mean, if you think about it, like interviewing is kind of investigative, which is in a way, can be used, to find out bad things about people. So it's very tactical, and it's a good tool for various reasons. But I know what you mean about it not being like, you don't necessarily want to go down that route. And like, I think it's just being known as like an interviewer, like even like a Wendy Williams, or there's certain people it's like you just have this it's like almost like a dirty name where people are like, oh, like that's just a style of interviewing that you're going to ask me some shit I don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Like I've never even, I'm trying to think if I've had a few interviews where I've been a bit like, oh God, is this person going to say some shit? I mean, I did have, oh my God, who was it? I think it's Freddie Gibbs. It was Freddie Gibbs started going, man, fuck Jay Mills, in my interview with him, because he had beef with Jay Mills. And I literally said, I'm not even going to talk about Jay Mills. And he said, man, fuck Jay Mills. It was like, you can't even skirt around something or say like, oh, I don't want to speak about that huge controversy surrounding your name. Let's just, because then it's there. You have to. So you kind of, it's like you have to decide, are you going to, or are you not? It's very hard to do that. And I've interviewed a convicted rapist. I've interviewed Mystical, he's served time for it. I've interviewed a convicted like manslaughterer. Is that how you refer to it? They killed someone, but it was manslaughter. So, and you like, I'm not like, that sounds really almost boastful. I'm not saying it like that, but I mean, it's like sometimes you have to put your feelings for those crimes aside to. Yeah, and I remember before I interviewed Mystical, I remember speaking to a fairly well-known rapper and being like, okay, I'm going to interview Mystical. Yeah, like, I don't know, it feels a bit weird. And he was like kind of was like very derogatory about the woman that he had pressed charges against him. And I was like, that's what I meant about that whole rap thing. Like the misogyny, certain things are still there that you can't try and tell a rapper to be a feminist in certain situations if they have a view about a woman doing something. But that Mystical thing, I was a bit like, oh God, not only am I going to interview him, I'm interviewing a rapper who a lot of other artists think is, got played by doing a rape charge that he essentially did commit. I don't know. It's such a hard zone to be in.
Talking about what you were saying earlier about like championing people, how do you pick? Because you must get loads of people just sending you stuff all the time being like, play me.
I like, it's funny because I was talking to like a musician I was with recently, and I said, when do you know that the song's good? And for me it's about 10. He said 3 seconds, but he's like listening to beats and stuff, he probably is listening in a different way. But for me it's within 10 seconds I know, and often the vocals haven't even started. It's a feeling more than it's anything else. It might be like, even because like, okay, Lil Nas X Panini, I'm not going to say I'm ashamed to like it. It's my favourite cheesy song. Yeah. But like, that's the kind of song that it's like, there's just a moment in it where it's like a little bridge, and I was like, this makes me feel ecstatic. Like there's an actual like build up or a crescendo in it that it has an emotional feeling for me. But sometimes I'm not even smart enough to know if that's there. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I just like the song. For me, the huge thing's a bass line. So if it's got a really good bass line, or if it's even got like a certain production style, like there's certain producers like Southside, the producer from 808 Mafia, any beat he makes I'm bound to like. But yeah, I'd say that for me it's like there's a certain magic that I'll feel from the song quite early on. But then there are also just certain artists that it's like, even if the song's not as amazing, I'll love it more because it's them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. How much of that matters in terms of like who they are compared to the actual product?
Generally, it doesn't matter who they are. I'd say I can tell straight away. But once I build up a bit of a kind of, I don't want to say repertoire, but almost like a fanship for that person. Like once I like, so any song G Herbo ever puts out is going on my blog. Even if I don't think it's G Herbo's best song, is going on my blog. But someone that I'm quite new to, it might be that I have to take like, I might listen to the first 4 songs of them that they drop before I say I like them and that I'm fully with them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because you don't want them to let you down.
Yeah, and that can happen. That can happen after years.
Yeah, it can. Yeah. So, through your blog, that was how you got the Rinse gig, right?
Yeah, which was quite crazy. I just got a DM from someone at Rinse saying like, "Oh, this should be a radio show," which I didn't see. But yeah, it's pretty quick that it turned into one. And then
how long was that between starting the blog and that?
Probably a couple of months, because I got so I moved to New York for like 3 months, just on a tourist visa thing, and I was there when I got the DM. So we were trying to figure out a way for me to record and send the show back, but it just didn't really make sense. Like, I think I actually did a show with Snips for like DJ Snips on Rinse for a couple of months, but then it ended up being that, like, he ended up going to Kiss, I think, and then I ended up doing my own show for 6 years with Rinse, weekly, which was literally, it was like underground, unsigned, everything.
You still there?
No, I'm at NTS now.
Okay.
So I went from but I wanted an earlier show time, and I wanted to be in the daylight hours basically. And Rinse's schedule didn't have space for that.
Okay,
NTS
cool.
offered me 4 till 6 on a Friday, which is prime time.
Yeah, great.
But it's monthly, so it's not. But I find that makes me like I can be more selective with the music.
Mm-hmm.
You get exactly what I really, really am impressed by that month. So. And I put mixes in it more, so like there'll be like, instead of me playing whole songs, there'll be like actually 45 minutes or so of a mix with like 50 songs in it. So yeah.
We always talk about planting flags, and like the blog is a flag, and then someone found that flag, and then from that you got the show, and then the show is a massive flag because that's a flag every single week that's going out for lots more people to find. Did you find that your career kind of picked up after getting Rinse?
Definitely. And I even, because I was doing video interviews, I'm now doing video interviews for my own kind of YouTube, but it was like, but originally it was like, so I worked for SBTV doing video interviews. Then when I went to Rinse, we had the Mercer show like on TV kind of thing. So I actually did a Chuck D interview. I don't know if you ever saw the interview I did with him was on video. And that was seen by a guy who worked for Apple in America. And that's when Beats One, the radio station, was starting. So he literally saw my Chuck D interview and was like, that, like, this guy is like grown up on, I mean, he's grown up in the era of punk and Chuck D and like, you know, wild hip hop. He was really like impressed just by the fact that I was that age asking.
Yeah.
And as intensely, it's like a guy his age, like having lived through it, he was like, okay, this girl's actually, you know, knows quite a lot about
Do you do like mad research beforehand, or is it all kind of because you've grown up with it, you've got it to
like I might listen to things like the Chuck D interview. I asked him something. I just listened to like, because I always like that day I'll be watching. I always watch YouTube interviews because I like to see how they're going to be, and like if you know like if someone's bantery or not, you know, they might be really serious and like that. So I watch YouTube interviews, then I also will listen to their music pretty much, like, or at least their recent album and a bit of like my favorites for the day or so before, just to get in the vibe. And like, so with the Public Enemy interviews, I'm like, I was born in 87, so they were dropping the albums when I was like, you know, I wasn't like listening to it in real time. So like, but I did grow up with it. So I was like, and I mean, that's the most iconic group like for their sound. So, but I remember asking, I was like, your sound's so abrasive. Was that something you actively like pursued? And I remember Chuck D saying that he had a girlfriend who she hated the sound of his beats, and he was like, when I'd make a beat and she hated it, I knew that I'm pretty sure he said that's literally what his thing was. And then he had another beat and he said, I can't remember if he said the tea kettle going off inspired him or if his mum thought it was a tea kettle, the beat he made, but it's one of their most famous. I can't you'll know.
Bring the Noise,
Bring
maybe?
the Noise, it is Bring the Noise. I was like, so, but that's where it was like, I literally was like,
now that you say it, I'm like, I'm listening to it in my head going, makes sense.
That's the thing where like, asking those kind of questions, and I mean, even I've never interviewed RZA. He's one of, I've interviewed 6 members of Wu-Tang and not RZA, so hopefully one day, bucket list. But I was like thinking about RZA, he samples the weirdest sounds, and Raekwon told me about what he would sample like a noise from the pipes. Like he's got, because Click Click, it's got a pipe sound. Like if you listen to Click Click by Wu-Tang, and it's like this, it's the sound of sampling that like you only get from sampling a real noise. You can't make that. Yeah. So it's like I'll pick up on those kind of things, and like I do have a really geeky way of listening to things, or like I feel like my brain does work slightly weirdly when listening to music. So a lot of that is thoughts I have, and other things are like things over time I've just believed are a fact, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Like Public Enemy make abrasive, raw sounding music. So I'd say it's a mix of that goes in, and then I'll literally sit and write down. I only write 10 questions usually, because I think 10 questions is enough to get enough out of. Otherwise you end up with, I've had an hour's long interview to transcribe, and no one needs that. So yeah, I think that's what I used to lead me with the question.
Who's on your bucket list?
Jay-Z's number one. I want to tell you this, but I really hope no one steals this. Basically, Jay-Z is on my bucket list because he's got a song that I am convinced that he's written in the frame of mind of Scarface. Or no, not Scarface, Manolo from Scarface, his best friend. It's a verse, it's like, if someone is a real Jay-Z fan, they're probably going to go back and know exactly which one I'm talking about. But I want to ask Jay-Z, were you writing that song from the perspective of Manolo and Scarface? And I believe he's going to say yeah, and go, how the fuck did you figure that out? Like, but there's a few clues on it. I also, so Jay-Z's pretty much number one. Like, I mean, that's like, I feel that's the one that I will get the most out of in terms of like, because that's like one, I mean, my favourite song by Jay-Z is Where I'm From, and I think that even just breaking down that alone would be an interview for me. Yeah. Like, hey Jay-Z, let's annotate this, and that's it. So if you're listening.
I mean, like how seriously, like, do you, because I mean, you've been in the room with his contemporaries.
Yeah.
So like, it's not crazy to think that one day you will sit. I know access to him is, and over the last few years is really restricted, but I mean, there's a real possibility.
I did once. So when I think it was 2011, with SBTV, we went to New York. We filmed a reality TV show, and the last episode we went to New York, and we interviewed Funkmaster Flex, Mobb Deep, like R.I.P. Prodigy. We interviewed him, literally sitting in the studio with Prodigy and Havoc, like, and Papa Mob, who he's like their uncle. I don't know, but so we did these like really iconic interviews. But we were like, okay, we're there for a week. Let's interview everyone.
Yeah.
And I actually emailed. I don't know why I had Jay-Z's PA's email, but I emailed her, and this is like 2011 Rock Nation era kind of.
Yeah.
So I emailed her and I was like, hey, we're gonna be in town next week. Just wondered if Jay-Z's free for an interview, and she actually replied. I nearly fell off my chair just for the reply, but she was like, thank you for your email. Unfortunately, Mr. Carter is busy. It's booked up next week. Of course he is. Like, but she actually replied and let me know, but she, I don't know if she's still his PA. That was like 7 years ago now. But my point being, I think you are right that it could be, I mean, the fact I got a reply from his PA was enough to say that they respected the request. But like, obviously I got a request 2 years in advance at least.
It's just putting the work in, because I mean, like when we interviewed Torre, looking at his story, like he's doing exactly what you're doing. You're just further, like a little bit further back than he is, because he's been doing it for 20 years longer than you.
That's true.
And I think if you just keep putting that work in, like eventually it probably won't even be you that facilitates the interview. Yeah. People will be calling out for it. It'll either be your audience or it will be whoever is managing him, or like the everything will align because you have put the work in to get to that stage.
And I think that's where it does kind of play out like that. Like Combat Jack is someone that I did interview Combat Jack. He passed away as well. He was amazing. But I'd say on the level of Torre, like he basically was a journalist and then started his own podcast. Which was iconic in its own right. So, but that's where it's like, I find like even Chuck D, when I interviewed Chuck D, he didn't really know me. So it was like more him bantering, but I was like, oh, I'm with the legendary Chuck D. He was like the legendary Lily Mercer. And I was just like started laughing awkwardly because it's just such a crazy moment to have that guy say that. But it's like, I think it does get to the point where, and I find like, I don't want to be like my reputation precedes me, but it's like, I do find that often I'll meet an artist or something and they're like, oh no, I've heard about you from whoever, like, or even like luckily because of socials, people can look and be like, oh, that guy follows her, oh okay, she must be legit enough, if that person's like, still follows
I've heard
her.
you talk about your socials before actually, and it's really interesting. So although you haven't got like the hugest following, like you still got a sizable, like a decent amount, but like although it's not huge, like the clout of the people that follow you
which apparently means more. I've been told brands will be like,
yeah,
no,
it does.
that's like, because you're getting to like, I don't want to be that girl, but you're getting to certain people when I am posting or whatever. But I think what I find, like, I still wonder, like, Just Blaze started following me after the choke incident, and like I remember Jamal Edwards from SBTV being like, don't tweet anything stupid, we need to interview him. Like, and I tweeted some stupid stuff since, and like I think he's still there. Like I don't really check to see who, because it's like I remember, oh god, Raekwon followed me for all of a day, and I was like, but it doesn't. It's it's like it's more, and also I think I must be so annoying on socials because I post so much music. I can't imagine what it's like to be a rapper that's like, oh, like shut up with this guy I don't even like his new mixtape.
Yeah.
But I think like I do tend to I don't know, I appreciate the people that do follow me on socials, but I try not to be too clouty, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so the kind of the way the algorithm works is if someone likes your page and then their fans like similar stuff, you'll hit the explore page on theirs. So to be followed by lots of big people who are in the same niche as you is absolutely perfect. Like if you posted lots of content that is similar to what they post, there's a good chance it'll be shown through their explore.
Got it. The only thing is, all those rappers just post mad weed pictures, and I'm like, I try and be like respectful, like not to say I don't condone it, but because like I've got all these like drill rappers following me, and I'm like them posting me like in a little dress. Like I'm just imagining, does it go on their explore page if they're only liking like King Louis?
But look, I think you're being your authentic self.
That's
like
true.
And I really like that there's no bullshit on your socials, like you're just being yourself. And I think that's why, because for a lot of these people, like you're so different to anyone that's interviewing them normally, and that must be a breath of fresh air. It must be refreshing to like in floats Lily just being Lily, and that's cool, man. I think it's great. Like I wouldn't change a thing, because if all of a sudden you started being a bad man, it's not gonna work.
It's funny because I've been DJing for this artist as well, Shocktown, who's an amazing artist, who's like he's got a lot of clout from a lot of like the more, I don't know how to say it. Basically, he was in jail, so a lot of the guys that he's kind of, you know, around in music kind of look up to him in musical ways, but also because he's a bit of a kind of hard guy. But so basically, I was like DJing for him, and I walk up behind where his friends are, and everyone that doesn't know me yet just looks at me like, are you lost? Like, do you know these guys? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm his DJ. And they're like, his DJ, you like, and it's, I just find it really amusing. It almost like, I almost like being, because I always think that the worst thing you can be is a stereotype or a cliche of what people think you're going to be. So like even, and I mean on such a level, it's like my dad, like with looks and stuff, my dad he always taught me that like there's nothing, like no one's going to treat you very specially just because you're pretty. You have to be interesting too. You got to have, you know, you got to have something to you. It's not enough to just be pretty. And he's being like that with my sister, who's like stunning. So I'm really excited for her to be like, you know, she's already trying to pursue things because she knows it's like you have to really have some substance to you. And I think that in this world, a lot of people, they perceive you a certain way just based on how you look. And when you surprise them, you double in value to them because they see that there's something there. Yeah,
I do a lot of portrait photography of like beautiful models, and I always say to them, like if we're talking about Instagram and stuff, like treat your account like you're not pretty.
Yeah,
because it's really like, because so many people just shameless selfish just again and again. It's like you're not providing any value there. Like the only people who are following you are just guys who fancy you. It's not like there's nothing of like quality there. So like put content out. It's actually good because that you're not gonna be pretty forever. So at least
like a very short amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like make it so you're actually like there's longevity in your content. Like you're going to be on social media for the rest of your life. That's just what's going to happen. So be something that's actually like people remember.
I think treat your life like you're not pretty, because like even I've been in certain situations. I'll walk into a shop and say hi to the shopkeeper and how are you, and they're like, geez, like I mean I'm from a certain part of London where people can be. I'm from like Essex Road in Islington, where it's bougie in parts, but it can also be really rough. So I feel like certain people just don't expect you to even walk in and say hi or acknowledge someone's presence. And when you do, it's like, I don't know, people just take you differently. Like I think the worst thing in life you can be is rude and like, or petulant and like expect too much for, you know, from other people just because you were born pretty. Like, so I think, and the same with talent. Like, I'm not saying like I do have a talent with interviewing, but is that a talent? Do you know what I mean? I'm like, because people think of me as like I'm a curator. I don't create really. I curate what I think is amazing, and like I do create around that. I create a magazine, I create podcasts, or like, you know, or like interviews and, you know, mixes. But generally, I view myself as a catalyst for pushing that rather than it being about me. And I think there are people that do what I do and make it about them, and it's not as interesting. You shouldn't be the main subject when you're carrying a bunch of great music through. So it should speak for itself if you allow it to, and that's the best way to be. And same with, I'm sure, with your photography, for example. You don't want to, like, for example, with Terry Richardson, it's a negative trait to have such a, I don't know, like a trademark image. Because then how many people start trying to shoot like Terry Richardson and they don't stand out at all? So it's like, I think you just have to almost figure out what your niche is. And if you don't have a niche, then that's fine, because you can kind of like, I don't know, tailor what you know you're good at until you find it. But don't try and force one. Like,
no, I think like when you start anything, it's like look at everyone you admire, try lots of different things, and then find what works for you. Don't just try and mimic someone, because it's really hard to mimic someone. It's like you can't keep it up. It's like, imagine living your whole life and it all being fake. Like, you might as well just be yourself, find something you enjoy doing, and just roll with that.
And often the thing that you think is really shitty suddenly becomes cool, so stick with
it. And if there's no one around you that is into that, just go and find the people that are, because if you're into it, some other people will be. I think it goes back to when we were talking about like going against the grain and sort of friendship groups of all, like, everyone has their role within a friendship group, and then all of a sudden if you break that and try and do something new, I think it's why a lot of people are like scared to start new projects and stuff, because if you all of a sudden break from the box that people have put you in, it frightens people, because that wasn't what I expected from you. You're going freelance, but you've always had a 9-to-5. This is different. This is scary to me. And because they can't picture themselves jumping out of that box, they will give you the advice of like, well, you know, that might fail, and you're going to lose your house, and just like filling you with fear. And that's, people
It's
do
so
that.
true. But it's so evil that people will do that. Someone will be so scared that you're going to do something you love, and they're not, that they'll just literally sabotage it. But I do think that, like, I don't know, I think life's too short for, like, because even I had a thing, probably approaching 30, like, because I feel like life is so long now that people have 3 or 4, well, not 3, if you're lucky to live that long, you can have 2 to 3 or 4 careers.
Yeah.
Different ones, like, not just, like, kind of co-aligning. But I had, like, a complete lack of focus and, like, kind of lost my passion with Viper. And I don't, like, it's really sad to have that with something you created. And like and then I was a bit lost for a minute. It's just like, well, I don't, obviously I love it, but like I don't like it I don't like my current relationship with it. And it almost feels, I'm not sure if parents ever have that with their kids. I hope it's not that deep. But do you know what I mean? It's like, do I still want this child? Like after, when it's 5, do you know what I mean? Yeah. But like I ended up thinking, yeah, I do want to keep it. I just want to adapt our relationship, and like I don't want it to like. Creative jobs, especially when you're working for yourself or trying to kick something off the ground, it's the most draining thing ever, because you're so almost like, it's this pipe dream of you believing it's going to work, and then after 5 years you're like, shit, is this really going to work? Like, am I insane? And then you have to almost like re-find the balance and go, no, it's I've done this, I've done that, it's all aligned in a good way. But I do, need to make sure I'm happy with it every day. And I think that's where, for a creative to lose focus in the thing that they spent their whole time crafting, it can be terrifying. And like, that's why I think, or even if you haven't found that yet, like, trying to find what your creative zone is, it is really terrifying, but you'll never find it unless you kind of explore it. So
yeah, and I think it's completely fine to evolve as well. Like if you look at pictures of yourself when you're like 13 or 14, you'd be like, what the fuck was I doing?
We don't talk about those.
Exactly. And it's like, but back in the day, you'd have spoke to that 13, 14-year-old self and you'll be like, I'm going to be like this forever. This is exactly who I am. But like, people change, people like evolve, and it's like, I think it's fine for your creative passions to evolve as well. Like if you're massively into one thing, it doesn't have to do that forever. Just because you've spent all this time doing it, it doesn't mean you don't like, you're not tied to that.
It's the sunk cost theory, isn't it? Because I've already put this much into it, I can't leave it behind because I'm already invested. And that's, it holds too many people back. Yeah.
I was reading this book recently, and there's a story that it's not quite exactly the same, but it made me think about, sometimes you're asking life for something and you keep on being like, oh, that's what I need. If that happened, I'd be fine. Yeah. And it's this story, this woman's like sitting on top of her roof as the floods come, and she's sitting on top of her roof asking like her kind of guardian angel to save her, and like, oh no, it's for the water to go back down. So will you save me by the water going back down so I don't have to leave my home? And apparently like 3 boats come by with space for her to get on. She says no to every single one, and then as the floodwaters rise and she dies, she goes to heaven and says to her guardian angel, why didn't you save me? And she said, you didn't see those 3 boats. Yeah. It's just that you was too blindsided by the water going down to see that was your option to get out, and because you didn't take it out, And I think it's like, sometimes you're so determined to have what you believe is the right thing for you that you kind of ignore what's actually good for you around, in everything. It could even be in a relationship, if you see what I mean. But it's like, in career, like, you're so sure that like you're going to get that job and it's going to be like that when that job comes up with, say, a startup, you're like, no, but I always wanted to work for Apple. And like, you can literally, I don't know, sideline yourself in ways because you're so set on something that is complete fantasy.
The amount of DMs we're getting from people that are saying, I've just left my quote unquote dream job, and they always put it in quotes because they thought it was going to be their dream job, but it actually turned out that working for whatever XYZ company just is not what you'd imagined it to be.
I always said to people, like, interning, because I interned for a lot of magazines growing up, and I was like, you can go and intern for Vogue and maybe make some cups of tea, or you can go to like a literal, like I went to War magazine, which was what War Nails became. Yeah. And like I was literally working for Sharmadean Reed when she was still doing styling, but she went on to do War Nails. I used to get my nails done like for free in the early days of War because they just wanted to practice, and like that, like if you look at like my CV, not that my CV is a bit weird, but I got told it was good, it was impressive, and I was like, but is it? Because it's just like, but I've got SBTV, I've got War Nails, Apple, and like, and even like Rinse FM and NTS, they're all very cult brands. And also so Sharmadean Reed and Jamal Edwards are both MBEs. They've both got MBEs, like, which Sharma's like not even 35, and Jamal's like, I think he's just turned 25 or 6. Yeah. Like, I've worked for 2 people, I'm 31, it's still pretty young, and I've worked for 2 people who have MBEs, and they're younger, they're younger than 35. It's like, I just think that I wouldn't have had the opportunity I've had if I'd gone to work for MTV, and like, I'd love to work for MTV if they're listening, but SBTV was the thing that I went to, and I got to interview Mary J. Blige and ASAP Rocky and all these people from Wu-Tang, because there was no one like higher up and more, skilled. They were like, well, you can do it, you know what you're talking about. And we were just a bunch of 20-somethings running around doing interviews at all hours, just trying to do as much as we could. But that's why I do believe maybe it's different now, that was like almost 10 years ago. But if you are going into a creative world, I think you're best off approaching brands that are slightly lower in the lather, in order to get actual real experience and to be a valued member of the team early on. You can end up with shares rather than just making tea and photocopies.
Yeah, exactly. I've said this to people all the time who are working like corporate jobs or go down that route. It's like, if you do that, you just do one thing, and you do that one thing, and there's nowhere you can really go with it. But if you start your own business, or you're doing something for a smaller company, you wear every single hat. It's like, if you go and work for Nike, they've got how many thousands of employees that all have got one tiny job role that do something really, really specific. Whereas like, you start your own business, day one, you've got 4,000 jobs. You've got every single little thing. And it's like, by doing all those different things, you can try lots of stuff and be like, actually, I like doing this, I don't like doing that. And it's in that kind of creative process of just like going through everything that you learn what you're actually passionate about, which I think you get a lot of people who have got those kind of corporate jobs, and they'll try that and then they'll move to somewhere else. And like, it's a really slow process to find out what you want to do, which is like great. And I think people should definitely do it. But sometimes it takes people 20 years to find out what they want to do, because they've been in these tiny little pigeonholed roles for so long, and they've not even known what was out there. As if they just tried something earlier on, even if it's just like a little side project, you'll have learned so much more, and you'll have got so much more different experience from it.
I think it's kind of sad what holds people back sometimes, because even I had a thing with, do you guys know Madbury Club? It was like back in it was like 2008 or 10. They had basically a really cool blog. They were I think it was 4 guys, all creative. One of them is still the Flatbush Zombies manager, and it was a photographer who was with Nike. Like, a few of them like shoot for Nike, like campaigns and basketball campaigns and stuff. But they were basically just 4 really, really talented creative guys that like basically started a blog together. And I used to be so jealous that they had this cool set, and like, I did have a couple of blogs before I did my music one, like just fashion ones. But I was like, I want a cool clique that blog, I want to have friends that blog. But like, all my friends were into the same things as me, but not wanted to sit and be a blogger. They all wanted to actually go out and get fucked and like go to fun events, and not, no one wanted to work. Like, but that was something I was really jealous of. And in the end, I did do it myself with Viper. Years later, I kind of built the confidence to do it alone. But I think that that's something that you can hold yourself back, because you don't necessarily have the confidence to do it alone, or you're too scared you want to do it with a clique. Like, but I think that that's something I regret a bit, not just moving forward on my own. And like I was being a bit of a sheep, and then I found my inner wolf and was like, no, I can do this by myself. And I found my clique after, because of that. I mean, it's still a great real clique, but you have a work clique that, they're into the same, like, they, even if it's like a new trainer drop or like a hype beast link sent across, but my friends wouldn't give a fuck about that. Yeah. So it was like really hard for me to see how to get into that creative world and be this blog character without the support system of my friends. So yeah.
There was a point where you nearly quit everything and went to be a bartender, right?
There were many. I mean, that bit, basically, my godmum, this was just before I got the beach job, and I think I was doing Viper, but I was like struggling on Viper alone, if you see what I mean. It wasn't consistent enough to be, paying all the bills. And my godmum, so my mum, the penguin that I mentioned earlier holding the mixtape, my mum gave me this penguin that's like I don't think she stole it from a nativity scene. Someone else did, and I think she paid real money for it in a charity shop. But I love this penguin. It's like a little fake penguin. So my mum gave it to me, and me and my godmum live close by. So we're saying goodbye on the street. I'm clutching this penguin, and my godmum basically says to me, I think maybe you should think about like getting a real job on the side, or like a real job to do while this is on the side. And I literally just looked at her. I was like, Anna, I just can't. Like, I can't. And I'm like crying, holding this fake penguin on Essex Road, like just like not screaming at the sky, but essentially being like, no. And in the end, like I think it was about a week or 2 weeks later, I got the beach job. And like I do always feel that there is that, and I'm sure this goes for many creative people. Like you have your rock bottom where you're like, I believe in this, but I'm probably crazy because like I literally can barely pay my rent. Like, oh, it's so peak right now, and then literally it happens. So, and like, I was really lucky that it was a job I wanted and stuff. Some people have to take a, you know, like it could be a corporate day job you don't want to do to build your website at night, but it's going to be sick because soon you'll have that as the real job. But it does, I think it's what's the word? It's not draining. It's just, it's tough to have that pipe dream, especially like my parents were so embracing of me being that creative and wanting to do that. Like I did internships where, you know, my parents helped me survive because I wanted to do an internship instead of going and getting that bar job. So I was born like super lucky with my parents embracing it, but not many people do. And not many people actually do make it because they have to get a real job. So I was really lucky, and I'm glad that I'm glad that I stuck it out a bit longer, and I'm glad I had the parents that would let me do that and then pay them back at a later date.
One thing I say to a lot of people who have that parents question, who maybe don't have the supportive parents of creativity, is you have to understand where your parents are coming from. Typically, like there's two kinds of parents. There's the parents who misery loves company. They want to bring you down because they've had a shit life and they resent having a child because it's actually meant that they couldn't go and do whatever they wanted to do, which is a really toxic thing, which I feel sorry for anyone who does have to deal with that. It's really hard. And then you've got the other kind of parent who is dealing with love. They love you, and that's why they're giving you this advice because they think it's the best advice that they could give you. And they're like, be safe. The way to do this life is to have a job and a 9 to 5, and that because that's what they did, and they don't realize that the world has changed. So even if you don't have those supportive parents, it's all about like self-realization, I guess, and knowing, because you could have quit that day when you stood in your tears with your penguin in the middle of the high street. You could have packed it all in, and then you wouldn't be sat across from us right now. And I feel like the people who win are just the people who keep going. I mean, that being said, if you've got a shit idea, like don't listen to people. If no one's buying your product after the first 3 or 4 years, then maybe it's not working. But as long as you are consistently building momentum, then that's a sure sign that you're onto a winner. And if you do just keep going, you will reach the promised land. But then I have a whole thing about reaching the promised land because there is no promised land.
Exactly.
It's like if you're not, if you're in love with the process, you can be happy for your entire life. If you can only be happy when you reach a goal, then you've got to reset each time that you meet a goal, and you've got to set a new one, and you're not going to be happy in the reaching of the goal. You're only being happy for the goal, and that's going to be a very fleeting thing of like, I achieved this, now I can buy this car and then move on to that, and that just doesn't work. It's got to be like the actual process of the building that drives you forward.
It's got to be, enjoyable as well. Like I was lucky. My parents both I've got two creative parents that both work for themselves. Very different. My dad is a landscape gardener, so my dad like lays the York stone for a living. Like it's creative, you know. But then my mum, she basically, it's actually 20 years this year. Sadly, my mum passed away last year, so she didn't get to the 20th anniversary.
Oh.
But she started a company in 2000. Well, I was 11 years old, so 99. She started a company that was a film library, an archive film library. And so this is like, I mean, you know, like when you watch like BBC documentaries, or if you watch any like kind of like B-roll of like streets and at night, or I mean, she had like, so she was the representative for a lot of other companies. So she had like, I mean, the most expensive piece of footage she had was the Elvis Presley interview with Ed Sullivan on the Ed Sullivan Show. She even had like, I mean, I've seen like home movies of the Queen as a kid at Balmoral and stuff, like insane footage. And like, I mean, Fela Kuti, she had like not the Martin Luther King speech, because I don't even know who owns that, but probably I'm sure one of the news agencies. But she had clips of, she had Martin Luther King speeches. Like you can, her website, her company's clips and footage, you can literally go on the website and just watch clips that you would buy. So amazing. I grew up like, that was my first job, was like logging archive clips, like saying like just look like shot listing basically. But so growing up with that and like it being one like really abstract, like, because I love vintage. I mean, I love vintage everything. Like, you know, I like, there's something about vintage film especially, but like, it's just nice to know kind of like, there's an interaction with it that I do get probably equally from music. So I don't know, just like seeing my mum set up that company and seeing the whole like the use of it, and like, so that's something I do plan to get into now, like maybe starting to make some documentaries with this footage and stuff, and like even if it's not going to be as, it's like might be a bit more abstract, like, but it's just like amazing to have the access to this amazing footage. But so that's the thing, my mum like was creative and also was like a bit of a like, I don't know, a maverick like that. It was like her own company, and she'd come out of making the documentaries. And she did some amazing thing where basically they had a contract saying that women couldn't start a company within 5 years of leaving that company. They said that men can't. Okay. Men can't, but they didn't say anything about women. Amazing. They literally didn't even mention women like being capable of setting up a company. So my mum basically just left. They were like asked if anyone. They were trying to get people to take redundancy, and she was quite high up, and they didn't want her to go, but she was like, I will, took the money, set up a company doing what they did, and she within like 10-15 years was actually winning awards that she was up against her old company in. Now there were like 3 members of staff as opposed to her old one having like 50, 100, whatever. Yeah. But like even the fact she could win with 3 people when they had hundreds, it was, so that's kind of like, and my mum was really like quite elegant and graceful about it. She wasn't like some harsh like businesswoman. She was like, just did her job and did it in a really sick way. So yeah, that probably inspired me a lot with her. And that's why I think like she had a toxic mum, so she wasn't the toxic mum. So she was like, just follow your dream, but be good at it. And like she was good at it. So obviously I was inspired. So yeah.
What was the best piece of advice she ever gave you?
My mum, this is the best piece of advice she ever gave me was a Jay-Z lyric. It was so beautiful. And it was because I was frustrated that I was seeing other people that I thought I was kind of maybe on a par with. They'd probably done more than me and stuff. But I was like, I should have got that job. I should have got to write that for this magazine. I should have done this. And my mum was like, don't watch what other people are doing. Just focus on your own lane because like you need to just be seeing ahead. And she was like, she used to say blinkers on because she was into horses. Mm-hmm. So blinkers on, like you can't see what's next to you. And then she said, remember what Jay-Z said? I ain't looking at those fools. I ain't looking at you fools. I'm looking past you. And I was like, all right, I'm done, Mum. Like I was like laughing, but actually was super impressed. Yeah. So yeah, that was the best advice she gave me. And it's the best advice ever, right?
So good. Just trying to imagine my mum dropping a Jay-Z lyric. I don't think it's going to happen.
Also, my mum she was super middle class. She's very Audrey Hepburn with it. So imagine her saying that in like she wasn't posh, but she was, well spoken. That's why I loved it. I was just like, you're too funny.
I think that a lot of people we've interviewed have been really lucky that they've either, and you've had both, like super inspiring parents and also worked for really inspiring people. And that's why this podcast exists. Like we're so lucky now that even if you didn't have that, you can find it all online and you can just look at other people's stories of how they've succeeded and you can just apply it to your own life. And that's why we're doing this. And I think it's such a beautiful time to be alive because there is that. You can be inspired by anyone now. You've just got like in your pocket, you've just got access to like the best brains in the world.
Even like Netflix, like I'm not even like I do watch a lot of things, but like when I try and watch creative like documentaries and stuff, like there's so many, like there's my inspiration pretty much is Diana Vreeland, who was
she's amazing.
Literally the queen of magazine editing. Like Anna Wintour was great, but like no one was Diana Vreeland, and she was the woman that first put celebrities on covers. So no one, that it used to only be models until Diana Vreeland came along and put like I think it's one of the Rolling Stones or someone on like Harper's Bazaar. But like she edited Vogue and then Harper's Bazaar. And that woman was incredible. And that's where it's like, I think what's quite cool is I can take this fashion editor from the 60s or 50s to 80s, I think. And then I can like look at rap as, and apply that to rap, if you see what I mean.
That's creativity, is taking two opposing things and smashing them together.
And that's rap. Like that's collage, It's like the most amazing thing about rap for me is the mixing and merging of cultures and sounds. And that's why I think there's so many people that I am inspired by that cross-reference, like from fashion to music and like, and then they like Dapper Dan, for example. Dapper Dan is like the ultimate G. Like sadly, I'm not too happy with what's going on now with him being used as some Gucci porn. But anyway, like that's someone that's like he's worked in rap as much as he's worked in fashion. So yeah. And that's why I mean, like if you spend a bit of time on the internet, you can find documentaries about all of these people and spend hours being inspired. Whereas like imagine when we were growing up, it was like, magazines were that for me. So yeah.
Yeah.
And what were your main kind of takeaways learning under the wing of like Jamal and Sharmadean?
Like believe in yourself, and like because both of them were mad young doing what they were doing, and they they did iconic things in order.
Didn't Jamal write a book about believe in yourself, self-belief? Yeah.
I think my name's in the credits actually. It was cute. He put a thing up on Instagram recently, and it was he did a Google Chrome ad when Google Chrome first started, and we were all in it. So like it was like X Factor was on, and like we were on TV right before X Factor and the ad break. It was crazy. The one thing I will say I've learned from them, which is like, I hate saying this because it sounds like a disservice, but it is respect to them. Working for someone else made me realize I wanted to work for myself, and that's because I realized how long you can spend crafting someone else's business while you could be crafting your own. And I think, I'm not saying, like, as we've said many times, the sheeps and wolves thing, not everyone wants to run a company, and a lot of people are completely content doing something creative where they follow a mold and they just keep making that, and that's just happy. But if you are the kind of person that wants to, like, lead and wants to have your own, like, you know, like you two have got this podcast, it's like you could be putting your work into another company's name and your day job and, like, be completely happy with that, but at night you can do something. Or even, like, many people I know spend, like, 20 years of their life working for a company, and then say in their 30s they're like, no, I've always wanted to build bikes. I don't know, but, like, you can literally, like, I don't know. I think
and I mean, we could be doing this podcast for a company.
Exactly, and that's the thing.
Which blows my mind that when you have, like, sick presenters who are doing, like, amazing interviews or whatever, but they're doing it for another company.
Which is
I've got a friend who I've got a friend who works for a really big magazine, and she's making all of these YouTube videos, and she's come up with this, like, cool concept. I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to hot her up too much, but she's doing these amazing YouTube videos, and I'm just like, you could be doing these for yourself. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's why I think that, especially when it comes to, like, you know, if you're shit at branding, do it with someone that's good at branding. It maybe you don't want to just do it for someone else. Like you say, you could be the voice, and you just want to be the voice, so your brand, like, you know, makes everything else happen, and that's totally fine. But when I was working for them, I was like, oh, I could be doing I could make my own SBTV, I could make my own Wild Nails, and I made my own Viper, and that was what I wanted to do. And that's what my mum did. So it's like, that's where you can see, and, like, I'm not in any way saying that you shouldn't work for someone else, but I do feel that I just, by seeing that, was like, I know it's for me to do that.
It's happiness, isn't it? And you're one of you've got good self-awareness, and you're one of those people, like we're those people that couldn't do that because it would always be gnawing away at the back of your head, because that is where we find happiness. Whereas if you find happiness working the 9 to 5, which a lot of people do, then that's cool. And it's all about finding whatever works for you. I've got no we talk a lot about the 9 to 5. Absolutely no problem with people who are doing that love it. My issue is with the people who keep on doing it even though they hate it. And it's like, I want more for their lives. You don't have to do it if you hate it.
Exactly. And same with what I do. Like, I've always made a point that I don't ever want to be like, I never complain publicly about my job. No matter, like, I was so tired when I went to interview Rat King. I walked into a glass door and I had a black eye for about 2 weeks. I'm so tired at times that I can't see glass. But I don't, like, if I ever complain about this job, do you think there's not, like, 5 people that want to go and interview Rat King?
Yeah.
Do you, like, how dare you? You get to go and hang out with, like, my favourite artist, and you're tired. Oh, sorry. Like, you can never put yourself in a position where you complain about something. Like, if I was cleaning toilets tonight, hell yeah, I'd complain. But, like, I mean, you got to figure out, like, that it's a job you chose, it's a lifestyle you chose, you plan your own days out. But 3, people would literally kill to be in your position just to have that one. Some people will kill to take a picture with Schoolboy Q, and I spend 20 minutes interviewing him for a YouTube video. And, like, yeah, I'm giving people something, but ultimately I get to go and hang out with Schoolboy Q for 20 minutes. That's one of my favourite rappers. So I just think it's like, and that's why I'm a strong believer in if you never work a day of your life if you do something you love, and, like, you have to do that. Otherwise, why would anyone care that you resent your own life? Like, I'm sorry, I don't pity that. Like,
you're the CEO of your own life. I always say that. Like, if there's a problem with the company, the fault lays with the CEO, and you are the CEO of your own life. You're in charge of every single decision. And it sounds really harsh, but, like, you can change anything that's going on in your life. I have empathy. Like, things are hard.
Oh yeah,
but
that's true.
And like, there are fucking struggles, and, like, because we've all been through them. Like we've all been through it. Like, everyone sat in this room, every single person listening to this has been through something hard. But there's ways of dealing with things, and the decisions that you make are what, like, your life is your decisions. And if you change your decisions, you can change your life.
And that's the thing. I think, I mean, we've all done a certain job that we hated. Like, I even used to stand at a trap nightclub, has been gone for years, but it's now, I think, still Stringfellows in Soho. I used to basically stand, this is so terrible, so I was actually underage, but I would be the person that would stand there and be like, hey, do you want to go to trap tonight? And, like, lead a gang of people to the door of the club, and I got paid £5 for every person I got in. And, like, I remember when I was 17, I made £100 a night, and I thought I had made it. I literally thought that was it for me. Like, I'm a promoter for the rest of my life. Do you know how long it is standing outside till, like, even 1 a.m? Like, I was outside a club recently, and I saw the security, and I was like, yeah, I feel for you guys because security, 1, you're totally sober. 2, you deal with dickheads, and 3, you're still outside till 3, 4 in the morning. So yeah, no, I don't complain about anything to do with my work, but I won't say I didn't work my ass off to get here. That's the thing. It's like there's a compromise there. I put in the hours to be here, but like I still won't turn around and say it wasn't worth it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, this was awesome. Where can people find you online?
At Lily Mercer and lilymercer.co.uk. I always feel like a rapper when I do that and they like spell their tag. But so lilymercer.co.uk is basically the home of everything that, you know, anything you want to listen to or find interview-wise, mixes, that's all there.
Oh, amazing. Thank
you very much. No, it's been a good, amazing chat to have.